Hello, my name's John, this is my Karloth Valois conversion, and you're watching Wargames, Models, and Other Hobbies. Hello and welcome back to another compilation video. Today we're going to have a look at the series of videos I produced when I was converting Karloth Valois for Necromunda. This character is based on the special character from Outlanders back in the 90s. You'll see all of the description in the videos of how I've gone about doing this. This was one of my favourite conversions I did a little while ago. I'm creating these compilation videos so all of my new subscribers, who I'm really happy that you're joining me here, can watch the whole series of videos rather than searching through all of my back catalogue and everything. As well as the Karloth Valois conversion, I did convert quite a few plague zombies, which in the description I'll leave links to all the videos relating to those. But for now, we'll get on with the video and you can watch the whole process of me converting Karloth Valois. In this particular series, I'm going to be creating a conversion of Karloth Valois from Outlanders, the Necromunda supplement in the 90s. This is one of my favourite characters from Necromunda back then, a kind of vampiric zombie master. I'll do a video on his backstory at a later date to go with this series, but in this video I'm going to talk about how I came up with the idea of doing a conversion of this character. So, it all started with this character here. This is the Warhammer commemorative series, Anasta Malkorian, the Vampire Lord. A really nice model, this one. As I was making it and painting it, I thought it'd be really nice to do a version for either Warhammer 40,000 or Necromunda. So after completing this one, I managed to get my hands on another one, which I did a small conversion just by changing the hands to holding some weapons. So in this case, that is a needle pistol from one of the Escher sprues, and then the sword is from one of the Delac kits. So after completing this model, I did a few other conversions of some plague zombies for Necromunda. Now to make these, I used a few different parts. Let me just grab them so we can see all three. So the hands of these guys are from the Age of Sigmar Crypt Ghouls kit. The head of this one is also from that kit. The heads of the other two are from the old Warhammer Zombies kit, and then the bodies are from the new Necromunda Hive Scum box set. I wanted to make a few plague zombies. I've got some of the original ones that I really like, but they're slightly out of scale now, so that's why I made these. But as I was making them, it brought me back to thinking about my space vampire character and who she exactly was. And I decided that all of these four will go together in a game scenario at some point. So she's controlling the plague zombies, much like family member, her grandfather, Karloth Valois. So my space vampire then became Bella Valois, the granddaughter and similarly cursed character to her grandfather. So once I'd come up with the idea for her character, it started me thinking it'd be really nice to have an updated version of this model. So I started thinking about places I could start. So I had a look around at different models and I came up with the Warhammer 40,000 Mephiston, Chief Librarian of the Blood Angels, as a base model for this character. So through this series of videos, I'm going to go through with you how I convert this model to get an updated version of this classic mini. I'm going to do quite a few different videos on this subject as we go. We're going to document this whole conversion from start to finish. and welcome to the second part in this series of videos on converting a character. In the first video, I talked about the character that I was going to be converting. So this is the original model of Karloth Valois from the 1990s Necromunda expansion Outlanders. And this is the base model that I'm going to be using, is Mephiston, the Chief Librarian of the Blood Angels. So in this video, we're going to have a look at the Mephiston kit to see what parts I'm going to use with this conversion, what parts I'm not going to need, and just the start of the basic planning. So we have our instructions here, not something that we're necessarily going to need with this. A base and the sprue itself. So the first thing that I know I'm not going to need, let's just put Karloth in the corner here so we can see him. The arms are going to need to be different for this. Obviously he doesn't wear power armor, so I'm going to have to find some alternative arms. Also remove the arm from the model itself here. I'm going to want to use the head, as it looks very similar to the look that I want to go for. Not going to use the base, but I will use the full caped body. So the front section here, the lower bits of cape, and then the larger back cape as well. When I start building this, one of the first jobs is adjusting this cape. If we look at Karloth's cape that goes round him, we'll see that it's got this up and down shape. It's not just a flat kind of cape going round. So what I'll probably be doing with this cape is I'll cut this to curves all the way along to imitate this. So looking at the body as well, although he's not wearing power armor as a character, the actual breastplate I think works quite well. It's quite Dracula-esque from Bram Stoker's Dracula. Kind of works with the character itself. So I'll probably keep this, but I may add a few details here and there. Also take a few details like the blood drop and wings away. Arms, as I said, I'm going to remove the arms. I'm going to look for an alternative. Whether this is from another kit or sculpted, I'll have a look when it gets to there. And then likewise the legs. I'm not going to use these legs, so I'll look at other kits about what feet and legs I could use. Or, depending on how the cape goes together, may not see the feet, so that may make him slightly shorter as well, which fits in with him being a normal kind of size character rather than a Primaris Marine. The collar I'll be clipping down, so as we can see the collar is a high collar, but it doesn't go up quite as high as Mephiston's one, so I'll probably be clipping that back. And then on the back as well, I'll be adjusting where the backpack would have gone, and just adding a few details to match the details of Karloth's back here. I'm not sure how I'm going to do the staff at the moment. That's something that I'll work out as I go. But in this video, I'm going to start the main part of his body using the Mephiston kit. Going to decide on what size base he's going to go on. And then we'll see what else I do as I make it. First thing I want to talk about, whenever I start doing a conversion, I get as much material together as possible to give me inspiration, give me guidance and so on. I've got the Outlanders book with this fantastic piece of art of Karloth in it. I've also got the original model as well. So I've got two bits to work with today. But for now, let's get started and make the body. So the key thing with this kit, as I talked about a few videos ago, there's certain things I'm going to have to change, but there are things that I'm going to keep the same. But for now, we're going to make the body with the cape and see what I need to do to adjust any of it. So I know this is a bigger model to start with using Mephiston, as he's a Primera Space Marine compared to the original Karloth. But what I like to think is the Karloth that I'm making is after his final dive into the abyss. And in that time, he's grown in power, grown in stature, developed his weaponry, his skills, his equipment. So he's more advanced now than when he appeared in Necromunda back in the 90s. So I may have to shrink the model down in a few ways, but we'll see how it goes and see what the size looks like as I build him. So I'm not worried too much about cleaning up too many mould lines at the moment. It's something that I will come back to when I've put the whole model together and tidied everything up. But if I see any, I'll always start them off. And I've also got to remember to carry on talking while I'm doing this, so the video isn't so silent. Okay, so let's put the main part of this together. So I'm probably not going to stick the larger cape on the back, but for now I am going to stick the cape that goes around his legs in place. So I always test fit things before I glue them, just to make sure I'm going to glue them in the right place. The benefit with this project, because I'm converting the whole model, it doesn't matter if I have to tweak and adjust things as I go. It's part of the process for me. I might find I glue something in place and then I have to take it apart and that kind of thing. Whoops. Okay. So what made me choose Karloth? I said in an earlier video, I think I got the inspiration when I made a space vampire character. It's a character I always liked. Helps if I put it the right way around. It's a character I always liked in the original Necromunda. Okay. Yeah, so he's a character I originally loved in Necromunda. I liked the whole idea of this zombie master, this kind of psychic vampire in the future. So it's been nice to update him with this model. So I haven't put the legs on him at the moment. I'm leaving him without the legs and the feet at the moment because I haven't decided exactly what I want to do. I also need to work out what base that I'm going to put him on. So we've got 32mm base. I actually put the original model on a 32mm Necromunda base, one of the new ones. But I've also got the 40mm base. That's what Mephiston comes on. But I think it might be just a bit too big for this model. I like the idea of him sitting on a smaller base. What I am thinking about is cutting the cape down in a way and then resculpting it so he sits on the base and you don't see his feet at all. So it's all hidden beneath the cape, very similar to the original one here. So immediately what that does is it takes his height from here down to about here, which makes him a similar sort of height to the original. So that's something I'm going to think about doing. And looking at this, I think it'd be quite easy to flatten this off and make it work. What I might do is do it in a way that the cape hangs off the back of the base a little bit. So it's almost kind of breaking the fourth wall of the base and coming out of it. So yeah, it's giving me a lot of ideas just putting the body together. And I mean, the backpack section with the cape itself, which will go on like this. What I want to do, where we've got these cutouts on Karloth's cape there, I want to do the same on here. So that's something I'm going to have to draw out on there, I think, and then cut it to the right size. But I'm not going to stick this in place for now. Probably one of the last things that I stick on, just so I can make sure everything fits correctly and so on. So I'm going to have to sort out his breastplate and his belt. Obviously, he's not a Blood Angel, and he's got some Blood Angel iconography on there. As we can see from the original, we've got a knife and a holster, and then a skull on his belt. So I'm going to easily cover that up. I'm not going to have to kind of shave it away too much, but to put a holster on there and a knife and a little skull. I'll do that in a later video for now. His necklace I might change slightly. Currently it's a little skull and crossbones, but I might do something different. As we can see on this one, it's a little, looks like a gem with a bat wing. If we bring the artwork in, we can see similar. There's like a gem in the middle and so on. So I've also got a few other parts that I'm going to start working on. As you can see from the image, his staff is topped with a skull and bat wings. He also has a bat's head on his crown. If we have a look at the original model, we can see that bat's head is a bit indistinguishable. You can't really tell what it is. That bat's head's a bit unidentifiable. It's more of just a skull. And then we've got the kind of the bat wings and the skull on his staff. I have got a few parts that I want to change though with that and update it. So I've got here a few other bits of kits. So here is one of the bats from Cursed City. And what I want to do is use the wings to make the wings on his staff. So I'll trim them down so they're not as big. But also the bat's head, there we go, get it in focus. The bat's head that comes with that one, I want to use it as the bat's head on top of his crown. So if we have a look at the Mephiston head on the kit, I think that's going to fit really nicely on top of there to make that crown. So that's something I'll be doing in a later video as well. As a basis for his staff, I'm actually going to use this Space Marine Librarian. The cherub I'm going to use for my Redemptionists. I'm going to use most of his Force staff to create Karloth's staff for this miniature. So that's a few things that I'm going to do in the future, as well as building the main part of the body for Karloth in this video. Still going to think about the base, actually. I might do him on the larger base, but have the robes flowing down. I'm not quite sure yet. I'm not decided. I'll have a look at a few different patterns of base as well, in case the pattern helps with the model. In this video, I'm going to be trimming his cape so I can fit him onto a base. I've decided to do this so I don't have to worry about any legs. They'll all be hidden underneath his cape. So for now, I'm going to start the first big cut of this conversion. So looking at the side here, what I want to do is get the base at about that level. So I'm going to trim off the plastic from around here. I'll re-sculpt it later on so it fits the base better, but I'll do a re-sculpting of various parts all at the same time, because I'm going to have to fill this hole just here. So the first cut in the conversion is always the most painful one to do, just in case you ruin everything. But also, it's the most exciting because it's the beginning of the conversion. So, first thing I'm going to do is mark where I want to cut with my scalpel. Try and keep that as straight as possible over the whole thing. So I can see I'm going to be trimming this off, cutting this section off, and this section here. Now, I could try and work my way through it with the scalpel, but what I am going to do is use my clippers to clip it just short of that line, and then I'll tidy it up after. So now I've done this, no going back. And let's do that one. Definitely no going back now. Now I've trimmed this off. So let's just start shaving that down. See, for now I'm quite happy with that. Let's get the base and see how this fits on. Now, as I can see, I've got to do the back as well, just here. So you can see where that's coming over. And let's have a look at the height, just to see how that looks. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. Got to tidy the front up a little bit. I might not actually need to do any sculpting. I'm going to tidy that up a lot more. I'm not going to worry about sculpting it. So let's carefully do each section here. Oh, I'm really happy with this now. Yeah, this has turned out better than I thought. I thought I was going to have to do some sculpting to tidy up the edge. That's not going to happen now, which is good. Save a bit of time, means I can carry on thinking further down the line for this conversion. I'm going to have to put a bit more glue into that bit. As you can see, that's unstuck itself. So what I will do, once I've tidied up this edge, just run a little bit of glue along that seam. There we go. And on that inside seam there. Okay, so I'm just going to hold this in place for now. Oh, I'm really happy with that. Not going to need any sculpting there. Now I'm looking at the back. What I want to try and work out is there a way I can put him onto here but keep some of the cape going over the edge, because I really like the idea of that going over the edge. I think all I need to do is trim this bit just here to make that level, then try and curve it up there a bit. So let's have a look at this. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from here, just mark it from there to here to take this whole edge off. What I will do is I'll use the clippers to do it quite quickly first. It's getting caught. I see. It's getting caught just on the inside there. So what I'm going to do is shave this away. Keep my eye on it while I do it, because I don't want to cut through the whole cape. So I'll do it with a bit of scraping. And it's getting there. Still. Okay, so I can see just there. Need to scrape a little bit away from both those edges. Right. So, what I want to do, I want to stick this to the base now. So it gives it time for the glue to go off properly. what I might do as well is take a little corner off the base as well. So let's see. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is just take that edge off there. Not a lot, just a little. So this sits better in there. There we go, that's what I want it to do. Just like, okay. So, now I've done that, I'm going to glue it down. Now, I'm going to have to let this glue go off because I did put quite a lot on there. All I'm going to have to think about sculpting is where this boot was. So on the Mephiston model, you can see the bottom of his boot comes out there. I'm going to have a look at the head, which I showed you in the last video. I've got the bat's head from one of the bats from Curse City. I want to use Mephiston's head. You'll notice I haven't trimmed down the collar yet or taken the arm off the model yet. I'm still not sure what I want to do with the arms, and the last thing I want to do is cut the arm off, then decide all I want to do is file it back. So I'm going to leave this on till I know exactly what to do. The collar I'll trim back when I'm happy with the head itself. So let's trim the head off the sprue and have a quick look at it. So the head itself, when it goes in, sits like that. And then the bat's head, let me just trim that from the sprue. Tidy it up. Oops. Now there is the stalk coming out of the back. Might leave that on to help me glue it to his head. Let me bring in the picture here. So you can see here we've got Mephiston's head. There's some pipe work and things which I might sculpt in. And we've got the bat's head on top. So having a look at how the bat's head fits on, I think that's going to look great, and it's going to fit just fine on the top of his head. I'm going to need to trim this collar now as well before I do it, so I'm just going to trim it off there and there. I'm going to use the clippers for this. I'm going to clip it slightly high. Always keep the little skulls and the little bits. So I'm happy with his collar now. Let's pop his head just in. I'm not going to glue his head in yet because I might want to reposition it. It sits quite nicely there. And the bat's head's going to sit on top. So what I'm going to do for now, I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the bottom of the tab here and just tack that onto the top of Mephiston's head. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So what I will be doing on the back, I'm going to sculpt the detail of the rest of the hat, which is why I'm not going to glue, whoops, it's why I'm not going to glue the head in place, but I will just put it in place for now. Okay, so the head's not glued in place yet, but here you can see, let's bring in the picture here, his head with the bat head on top. I'm going to sculpt the tubes and things like that coming out of it. But yeah, I'm happy with that for now. So far, I've got the main bulk of the body put together. Obviously, there's a lot of sculpting and things to do and sorting the arms out. But in today's episode, I'm going to start working on his staff. So looking at it on the original model, we can see it has a skull with bat wings coming out of it. If we have a look at the original artwork, we can see those bat wings on the skull as well. What I want to do with this one is make it slightly bigger, look a bit more menacing. So I'm actually going to use the wings of the bat that was left over from starting off his crown. I'm also going to use as a basis for the staff this force staff from the Space Marine Librarian. All I'm going to do in this video is add the wings to the staff. I'm not going to remove the hands or anything from the staff because I'm still not sure how I want to position it. But I want to have a look at what it's going to look like with the wings on here. So to start with, let's start clipping this off. So looking at this staff, where the hands are, I know they're power armoured gloves, but I'm going to tweak and adjust these later on. I'm wondering whether or not to have him holding the staff something like this, or holding it outstretched with his other arm. It's something that I'm going to decide as I carry on converting the model. So what I want to do now is trim these wings off so I can place them onto the staff. So here is the wings on there. Right, let's trim these wings down to get the shape and size that I'm looking for. They're okay. Okay, so let's tidy up the mould line a bit on here. I'm going to come back to these and sort mould lines out and everything. But for now, I just want to clean it up so I can get the wings onto the skull. So I'm going to cut the horns off. And again, keep those horns. Always keep the little bits for other conversions. You never know when you're going to need them. I have loads of little pots of bits and things that I've cut off other objects, other models. So, need to just shave this off here so it's a little bit flatter in the right angle. Probably the same on this one. There we go. Now, as I stick these on, there's going to become a front and a back to this. So obviously if I stick them on this way round, this is going to be the front. If I stick them on that way round, it becomes the back. And depending on how I put this on Karloth, whether I hold it this way or this way, that will change which way round it has to be. But all I'll do in that case is snip the head of the staff off and turn it round. I am moving towards quite liking the idea of him holding it like this. So I'm going to put it in as this being the front. Okay, so here we have the bigger bat wings on the staff. So if we compare the two staffs, I've gone for the bigger wings. I quite like the idea of the staff having much bigger wings on the top of it. And I am moving towards the idea of him holding the staff like this. But obviously I've got to change a lot of the detail, sort out the hands, maybe sculpt a few extra bits on it and so on. So far I've converted the main part of the body from the Blood Angel's Chief Librarian Mephiston. There's going to be a lot of work on sculpting on the chest, adding details and things like that, also sorting out the crown. Started work on his staff in the last video. In this video we're going to have a look at his cape. So I'm just going to remove this as I haven't glued it in place yet, and have a look at the original one. You can see we have these curved sections to the cape itself. Mephiston's cape is just a smooth edged, blowing in the wind. What I want to do is put some curves into this to make it more like Karloth's. So to start with, I'm just going to use a pencil and draw them on and see if I can work out exactly what I want them to look like. Okay, it's quite rough at the moment, but you can see where I've put those curves to work out exactly where the curves are going to be on the cloak. Now, because this cloak's quite dynamic, blowing in the wind, they might vary slightly in size as I go along, but it's disguised by the ruffles going all the way along, all the ripples in the cloak here. So there's a variety of ways I could go about trimming these. What I think I'm going to do is start by just clipping the edge with my clippers to get close to the curve, and then just with my scalpel tidy it up a little bit. If it doesn't quite work out, I can kind of trim it back and keep working my way up the cloak until it does work. On the original model, it's quite high up. So with this revamped one that I'm doing with the conversion, I'm going to start low down and then adjust it if needed. So there's the first curve put in place. Let's have a quick look at what it looks like on the model itself. I mean, it does work quite nicely having that curve, so I'll put the other ones in. What I might have to do afterwards, once I've done it, is thin down these sections. But at the moment, I just want to get the shape so we can kind of have a look at what it looks like. Okay, so it's quite rough at the moment, but I've got those curves in his cape and his cloak. So let's just put this roughly in place so we can see. So it definitely ties in more with the original model with those curved sections in, rather than a straight edge all the way round. Now I'm only going to leave it at this for now. I'm not going to do too much because I'm going to come back to it as I start building the rest of the model. It's only a general idea of these curves in this final cape. I do quite like it being longer, so I'm quite happy that I didn't have to trim too high up. But as I file this back and tidy it up, it will move up slightly anyway. So we'll see this slightly more defined as I carry on working. Now in this video I've got a few parts that I'm going to work on. I've prepared the parts themselves. So the first thing I'm going to work on is his right arm. And what I'm looking at, if we have a look at the original artwork, I'm looking to replicate his left arm. So I'll be doing an arm holding some psychic flames or something like that. I've already, as I said, prepared the parts. So what I've got is another arm to match the left arm I did in the last video, so that's a Adeptus Mechanicus arm. I've got bits of Mephiston's gloves, his gloved hands, and then I've also got an Adeptus Custodes top knot from their helmet, which I'm going to use as the flames. So to start, let's just take his cloak off and have a look at lining up this. Let's get it in focus, there we go. Lining up the shoulder. So nice and easy, this one. Let's get some glue on it. I don't have to do any chopping or anything like that. So plenty of glue on that bit. I want this to hold it in place quite quickly. Let's just lift that up in place. And while this is in place, I'm actually going to put the cloak back on, the cape back on, just to make sure that I don't get the hand or anything like that in its way. Well, it's not staying in focus. Let's get that in focus. Okay, so what you'll see on the back, obviously there's bits of detail that would have had the power armor arm on there. I'm going to resculpt a lot of the cape and everything like that. Okay, so the next job, let's get this hand in place. I'm going to rotate this round slightly. Okay. So a bit of glue on the cuff of the glove. Just want to get this lined up correctly here. I mean, there are mould lines and things on this, which I will tidy up when I get round to kind of doing all of the final details on this model. So I'm going to wait for this to dry for a little bit before I go on to gluing the hand on. While I'm waiting for that side to dry, I have been trimming down his staff to go into this hand. So the first thing that I want to look to do is attach the head of the staff onto the hand here. So a little bit of glue. Put the lid on that. So I'm just going to hold this in place for now. So we're going to wait a little while for this to dry, and when it's dried we'll get on with the other bits. Okay, so I've allowed the glue to start drying. So what I'm looking to do with the right hand, I've got the Mephiston pointy finger that I'm going to attach to the glove cuff itself. So this is going to go into a lot of the sculpting when I start doing sculpting detail on this. Obviously there's little bits missing from this hand itself. Let's just put it in place and line it up. So there we have the hand in place. And what I'm looking to do is attach the Adeptus Custodi plume to the hand to look like flames. So looking at the hand like this, I'm actually thinking I might hold off from this flame for now. I'm going to think about it. I do quite like the way that hand is positioned. I quite like the way that hand's pointing. So, okay, I'm going to leave that plume off for now from the fire. I'm going to have a think about that, but I'm going to leave that as is. What I need to do, though, is complete the staff going down to the ground. So what I've got for that is some styrene strip that I'm going to cut to size to fit in place. I am going to be resculpting around here, so it's not going to be much of a problem if it doesn't quite go to the ground or it doesn't fit down here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get a rough idea of the length that I need. So as it goes in here, you can see it's hitting the cape at the moment. So what I will do, rather than cutting this down anymore, I'm just going to shave a bit out of the cloak, which I can sculpt back in later on. There we go, perfect. Okay, so let's apply some glue to that new hole that I've made and the base of the handle of the staff there, and then put this in, position it on the side. So we're getting somewhere now with this conversion. I'm really liking the direction that it's going. Now in this video I'm going to be taking a look at one of his arms to work out whether a straight swap with another miniature will work. The arm that I'm looking at is from a Skitarii Ranger. It's got a shoulder pad that I'm quite interested to try and keep. Obviously the hand is going to go and I'm going to replace that. It looks a better scale than the power armor arm that's on there already. So the first thing that I'm going to have to do is take this arm off. And to do that, I'm going to use my clippers to take the bulk of it off. I want to keep the cuff of the glove. So what I'll do first is trim that arm back so I can keep hold of that. Chances are I'm going to do some sculpting around these anyway to tidy them up. So, okay, that's cleaned that off. What I want to do before I forget is recover the cuff of the glove, because I want to use his gloved hands in this model. There we go, there's that section just there. So as well as this, what I need to do is get his hand from the kit and take that off so I can put this on the arm. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to take the foresword off just above the hilt. So it gives me some options when I attach his staff. But for now, so first things first, after I clean this up a little bit, let's glue the cuff onto the glove. Always the little bits flying around the place. There we go. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to prepare the arm. So what I'm going to do is take the hand off at the wrist, clean up where the weapon is. I'm also going to have to angle slightly where the shoulder is. I don't want it sticking straight out like that, or do I? I'm going to take the hand off first, then I'm going to have a look at that with the staff, because it might actually look quite good. Okay. So let's get the hand in place. Need to orientate this round the right way. Oh. There we go, it's kind of like it. Let me just put his cloak on so I can see that a little bit better. Now the thing is, whenever I'm doing these conversions, anything that I do isn't permanent. I might change my mind quite a bit as I'm doing things. I might change the look that I want to give something. So with the arm at the moment, I've got that shoulder pad on there from the Skitarii Ranger, but I've got it there as a bit of a guide because I'd like to sculpt possibly the shoulder pads. If we look at the original model, you can see he's got proper big shoulder pads, but having that as a basis is quite useful. So I'm looking at it, I kind of thinking I want this kind of an angle on it rather than it sticking just straight out. If we have a look at the staff I did previously, obviously I've still got to trim the hands off this one. Yeah. That's... So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to trim into the actual model a bit and see what angle that actually gives. So that starts to give a possible angle that I'm looking for. Just a little bit more of that. So a lot of the cloak and everything I'm probably going to sculpt extra detail on, just kind of play around with the scale of this. There was a good comment made on the previous video with the cloak, how big the cloak is. I may trim this further back. It all depends what this model turns out like. If it's a kind of a centerpiece model, I'm not too worried about it being too big for kind of like the corridors in Necromunda. But if it becomes more of a gaming piece, I will reduce this cape back down a bit, just so it's a little bit smaller and easy to manage whilst playing. For now, let's have a look in here. Okay, so I'm getting quite happy with where this is positioning. What I have noticed is, though, the arm has gone a little bit skew. So while that's still pliable, I'm just going to move that. That's better. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do is trim off the little cable from the back of the arm. Oh, hands come off. I'll re-glue the hand in a second then. Let's just get this cable off. Okay, so before I stick the hand back on, what I will do, I'm just going to shave a slight angle onto the bottom of the arm there. So yeah, there we go. I can position that arm in place. So yeah, before I put the hand on, let me re-glue. Let me glue this in place. Perfect. So this gives me room to do some more sculpting over the top if I want to. We'll play around with the details later on. So what I'm looking for is to straighten this glove up as much as possible. Looking at where the staff's going to sit, if that's there. I'm quite happy with that. So obviously there's a few little gaps and things. I'm happy with how that arm looks. If I just put the cloak back on just to see how that's looking. Yeah, no, I'm happy with that. So the staff itself, obviously I've got to take the hands off the forestaff, but looking at where that's going to sit, I think that's going to work quite nicely. So that's it for this video. Just looking at this arm just to try and work out the direction I want to go with this part of the conversion. I'm quite happy with that. So I'll have a look around for a right arm to do a similar thing. I want to either work out whether he's going to be holding his pistol or holding his hand up using a psychic power or something like that. But for now, I'm quite happy with the way this is turning out. But as I said before, I may change this later on down the line. It's the benefit with the plastic glue. I can take the bits off, re-glue them and that kind of thing. Now, in the past few videos, we've been making all the different components for him. Today, we're going to concentrate on his chest and belt to try and get the detail a little bit more like the original. So here's the original. You can see he's got a holster and a knife, as well as a belt detail of a skull and a different necklace. If we have a look at the original artwork that I've been working from, we can see there's a skull on the belt and the holster and the knife. You can't really see it on this one, but the necklace is in there as well. So to begin with, what I need to do is take off some of the Blood Angel iconography. Also, there's a holster from Mephiston under the cape, which I'm going to get rid of. The holster that I'm going to use, after a little bit of tweaking, is the one from the Delac kit. So I'll be mounting that on the front. It might be a slightly different orientation from the image. Depends how it fits on there. So first things first, time to get rid of a bit of the original detail. Okay, so first things first, I want to have a look at the necklace itself. On the original model, it looks like there's some little, almost like bat wings, some wings around a central jewel. So I've got something I can use for the central jewel. From the Adeptus Custodes kit, the jewel that goes on their shields, I'm going to cut one of those down and use that. And then the other detail I'll probably sculpt on later on. So what I also want to do is just take the front of this skull off that's on Mephiston's necklace. So very carefully. Okay, so that's that first bit taken off. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to straight away glue that on. So I will, when I do the sculpting on this, it's quite a big gem that I've put there. is put those wings sculpted on the edge of it. I like the idea of the gem being slightly oversized rather than the smaller one on the original. Just adds to the kind of the character of the piece. Okay, so that's okay. So if we have a look at the holster that I've got, what I'm looking for is probably to put the holster on this side like this, and then a knife will go on the other side, and then in the middle of it we're going to need that skull from the original belt. So first things first, looking at this holster from the Delac kit, I'm going to need to take the snake off it, as he isn't a Delac. Okay. So what I'm looking at is probably to stick it somewhere like that. As you can see, the teardrop from the Blood Angel symbol is pushing it out slightly. So I'm not going to worry about taking the wings off the belt because they're going to get completely covered, but I will take that blood drop off just to help with positioning the belt detail. So that will fit just there like that. While I'm just holding it there, I'm going to put the cape on, because what I don't want to do is position it so the cape can't go back on. Yeah, so that's going to go there like that. I'm quite happy with that. So what I will do straight away, I'm just going to glue that into place. Okay. So I'm happy with that just there. Just going to bring that down a little bit. There we go. Okay. So the next thing I need to work on is his knife. So what I actually have, I've got one of the knives, the daggers from the Escher kit. I've also got one of the knives from the Adeptus Custodes kit. What I'm looking to do is take the handle from the Custodes knife and replace the Escher's handle as well. And replace the Escher's handle. So first things first, I'll cut the handle off the Escher's knife. So just a nice quick cut on that handle. So what I need to do is I need to let that handle dry. So what I'm going to do while that is drying is have a look at the skull on the belt. And what I'm going to use, again from the Delac kit, the cane has a skull which I think would fit quite perfectly with this. So first things first, let's trim it off the base. So with the back trimmed off, I'm just going to use the knife to hold it in position and see what it'll look like. Yeah, that's going to work fine. So perfect. So the handle's now dried on the knife. So what I need to do is likewise put up. Just seen teardrop there, a little blood drop. Let's get rid of that. With this. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put some glue on that the wing section of the old belt, and I'm going to thread the knife underneath the holster. So I might need to re-glue the holster. So yeah, I will need to re-glue the holster. Let me just take the holster off, get this knife in position in a place where I'm happy with it. So one thing I have noticed is that the handle is going to interfere with one of the tubes that's going to come off this. So what I'm actually going to do is reduce the size of the handle slightly. What I will do, I'm going to get that tube and that pipe and stick it in place. Right, let's get back to the knife. Let's put another bit of glue on there. Okay, yeah, that's better. So there's the knife in place. So the next piece is that holster. So I'll put some glue on there as well. Okay, so there's the knife and the holster in place. So although I put these pieces on and took them off again, it's worked out quite nicely in the end. And without realising I was going to be doing it, the cape's now stuck on. So we can see how Karloth is going. He's almost there. The next thing I want to work on is his crown. And after that, I think that's going to be the end of all of the plastic work, and it will be on to sculpting. Now, we've almost finished all of the plastic items on this conversion. In the next video, I'm going to be looking at some sculpting and working with green stuff to fill gaps and sculpt any extra detail. But in this video, I'm going to finish his crown and his back. So if we have a look at the original model, we can see that there's lots of tubes and cables, even a bit of brain sticking out on his head, and then wires and tubes and a few other things on his back. So what I've got to create the tubes and things like that is the Skitarii sprue. There's a few pieces I've looked at and thought they'll work perfectly. So I'm going to start with this arm and the backpack, which has the curved tubes on it. So the first things first, I'm going to trim these off. Okay, so these pipes, these tubes on these items, I'm going to be sticking to the back of the bat's head. One on the left side, one on the right side, and then I'm going to use another one along the middle. As there's a lot of hair already sculpted on the Mephiston model, I don't think I'm going to worry about trying to sculpt a brain sticking out from the back like there was in the original. When I do the sculpting on the hair, though, I will be bringing the hair longer down the front of the model. So, looking at the tubes on these two pieces, originally they'd connect together like this, but what I'm going to do is trim the one off the backpack first and work out exactly the best way to fit it. Then I'll trim the one off the arm a similar length to fit onto the crown. Okay, so there's the first cable glued in place. You can see there's a little gap just here that I'll fill with green stuff, sculpt a little bit detail in it, as well as under there. But that's the first tube going to his crown. So I'll now prep the second one to go on the other side. So there's the second tube in place. So while those are dry, I'm going to work out what I'm going to put in place of a backpack, as he doesn't have one on the original model. He's just got a few little bits of detail. Looking at the Skitarii sprue, there are lots of little details I could play around with and possibly include on this. Sometimes these kind of details are the fun part of making the model. Actually, I quite like this piece with all of its details. Not too worried about the side with the screen on, but the side with the little kind of circle details and the little rod and everything coming out of it. I think I'm going to use that on the back. Yeah, I quite like the look of that. So what I need to do is trim down the stalk on the backpack, and then I'm also going to trim down the back of this. So let's sort that out before I glue it together. I've trimmed those both flat. I quite like the look of that on there. Maybe the other way around. Let's see what it looks like. Well, yeah, actually with the aerial sticking up, I think that works quite nicely. The detail on his backpack there, don't know what it is. Could be something for drawing psychic power energy or something, I don't know. But just has that kind of air of similarities to the original. I might stick something underneath actually, because we've got this little, almost like a tank, fuel tank underneath this one. So I'm going to have a look again at what's on this sprue. And I think just using one of these pieces from one of the guns will work perfectly. Okay, so trimmed that off. I'm just going to stick that underneath. So it's not looking exactly the same as the original, but it's just that air of similarity that nods to the history of the model. There we go. Yeah, I like that. So different but similar on that back section there. Okay. Now I'm looking and thinking, do I put in any more tubes on the head? You know what? I'm going to leave that for now. That detail. I may even sculpt a brain. Who knows when I come to the green stuff later on. So what I'm thinking about, so there's the little back wings, the little wings on the gem that's on his chest. What I might do is see what I've got that I can use to create those wings. Okay, so looking through some bits, I have some small bats from the Cursed City sprue, the giant bats that I used for the wings of his staff, and the remains of that model as well. So what I'm looking for is just I think I'm going to use the wings. Yeah, I'm going to use the wings off this one to become the wings on his necklace. So I'm just looking at this. Now what I'm going to do, just going to trim the top of that wing slightly. There we go. Okay. So, oversized necklace, but I like the idea of that. And then I'll have his hair flowing down when I sculpt that. So yeah, I'm happy with the way that's turned out. I've just got to... You know what? I'm going to include them. Just going to take a little bit of one of the fingers. So the Twitter poll, I think it's close to a 3-to-1 vote that he has the psychic flames. So I've been umming and ahhing since the beginning. I'm just going to stick them on. Worst case scenario, I take them off and I replace the hand. But for now, let's just stick these flames on. So, here's my model of Karloth Valois. Now in this video, I'm going to do a bit of sculpting to tidy up a few of the details on the conversion. Things like filling the gaps where the original foot of Mephiston was. I'm going to resculpt some of the cloak down here. Other bits are going to include filling little gaps that are around the place. I've decided to keep the shoulder pads of the arms as is, so I'm just going to fill the gaps around those as well. A few little gaps on his crown, and then the final thing that I'm going to sculpt is longer hair coming over the necklace and things like that. So to get started, I'm going to mix some green stuff and start sculpting. Okay, so I've sculpted the bottom part of the cape here, and I've filled a few of the holes and the gaps and the holes on the crown. The next step will be sculpting the hair. So I'll get started on that. Okay, so I'm going to start with the green stuff I've got left over. Roll it into a bit of a cylinder, split it into two. So I might have the right amount mixed, which is it's a rarity. I often mix too much and then have to try and find something else to do with it. So I'm just going to roll out a little cylinder like that, and then I'm going to place it where I want the hair to be. So I'm going to make it slightly flatter. So let's roll this a little bit more and just flatten that out. Okay. So that's where I'm going to want the hair to come down. So I'll get the other side done to a similar kind of level. So the benefit with the green stuff and other sculpting materials, two-part ones like this, is because they take a bit of time to cure, you have got time while you're sculpting to kind of move bits around, and then as it gets harder you can add a little bit more detail and that kind of thing. So I've got that green stuff in roughly the position that I want it to be in. What I need to do now is start putting the texture in for the hair. So the way that I'm going to do that is just bit by bit, using the sharp end of this sculpting tool, is just push the detail in. So pushing the little shapes in, trying to get it to look like the end of the hair. I'll fold it over on itself while I do it. It's one of those things that you've just got to play around with, and also don't worry while you do it. If it goes wrong, because it's a different material from the plastic, you can just take it off. So I'm just going to keep gently poking that in place. And then at the end, I'm just going to scrape off some bits to get a raggedy kind of edge to the hair. Okay, yeah, that's that one. Okay. So this one's a bit more kind of seen this side, so just going to take a little bit of time to push it to where I want it to be. Okay, I'm quite happy with the way that this hair is turning out. Just got to scrape the ends down now to okay, I'm happy with the way that's turned out. I've got a little bit of green stuff left, so I'm just going to have a quick look around for any parts where I've missed a gap or a hole or something. There's always a little bit of time with the green stuff that you can add bits of it while it's going off. Right, what I'm going to do then with this little bit then, let's put it on, just put it on there and add a little bit more detail to this part of the cape. Just another little ripple there. Okay, well, there we go. So that's it. The Karloth Valois conversion is now complete. I'm happy with the way that the green stuff has gone. The next part of the job, once I wait for the green stuff to cure, I'll then be priming this and thinking about paint schemes and things like that. If people would like to see the painting process as a series of videos, please drop it in the comments, let me know. But for now, I'm really happy with the way this has turned out. Normally when I'm doing a conversion, I'll do it in one sitting, but I've done this over quite a few weeks to produce the videos for it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. If there's any other videos you'd like me to produce, please drop it in the comments. At the end of this video, there's going to be the outline of Karloth's history and how he became who he did. And the last thing I've got to say, thanks for tuning in. Thank you to all my new followers. My name's John, and you've been watching War Games, Models, and Other Hobbies. Karloth Valois is one of the many who fled into the Underhive to conceal some dark and terrible secret. In Karloth's case, it was that he was a weird, a human with latent psychic talents. Flashes of precognition gave him constant nightmares, and thoughts and feelings of others pounded against his consciousness like surf against the shore. Unable to endure the cacophony of Hive City, he fled into the dark fastness of the Hive bottom and headed into the wastes, as far from others as he could get. Alone amidst the crawling horrors of the bad zones, he soon weakened and almost died many times. At the last, as Karloth foraged for a few miserable morsels of food, he was pursued by relentless plague zombies, a pack of shambolic cadavers hungry for his flesh. Karloth ran until his feeble body could carry him no further, and the foul creatures set upon him, worrying at his flesh like dogs. Karloth could sense the dim, sluggish minds of his devourers, their thoughts made jagged by instinct, but still simpler than a child's. Fired by the strength of desperation, Karloth drove the monsters back with an effort of will, quelling their murderous instincts so that they stood passively by. He lay there, crippled and helpless, with the zombies all around him as the dreaded zombie plague they carried ate into his brain. Hours passed, but somehow Karloth clung to the slender thread of his life force by draining what little will remained to the zombies, so he could maintain his own existence. In time, the plague abated, and Karloth found that he was still alive, after a fashion. Somehow Karloth's powers were strangely affected by the neuron plague. He was able to bend the plague zombies to his will within a limited distance, firing their hunger or sharpening their wariness as he desired. He could drain the life energy of others and absorb it into himself, and he knew that this was the only useful means of sustenance. Most of all, Karloth had sensed the fate death would bring. Endless ennui, horrible torments, and incessant terror. He vowed that death would never take him. Karloth took to a wandering existence in the wastes, preying on the living where he could, and using the plague zombies to protect him from his enemies, or to get what he wanted. His reputation grew and he became feared throughout the Underhive as a soul thief and life taker. Gangs made unholy pacts with him to gain his help, and his zombie hordes became a real threat. It was whispered that the gods of darkness favoured Valois, and people became afraid of his very name. But the Brethren of the Redemption flocked to the Underhive to test their faith against such an archdevil in human form, and their flamers drove him deeper into the pit. The hunt for Karloth Valois forms an epic in its own right. Everywhere he turned, he was betrayed or driven away. Such was the fears others felt of him or the Redemption, or both. For a time he escaped into the poison pools and refuse of the scavies, but the fanatics of the Redemption found him even there. The red-robed priests pursued Karloth to the very edge of the abyss before he turned at bay, fought for his life. The zombies and Brethren fought a great battle over the spider-haunted depths, the flames lighting the darkness as they cut through rank upon rank of the rotting dead. Karloth feasted on their lives and left them as shriveled husks, but the priests came on with the zeal of madmen, and no zombie could stop them. To evade them and avoid a heretic's fate, Karloth cast himself over the brink into the mile-deep abyss below, shrieking his defiance of death. Though the Redemption searched for weeks, no trace was ever found of Karloth Valois' body. Underhivers knew they were mad to try, for nothing can ever be found in the abyss unless it wants to be.